In 2026, millions of passengers will book flights believing they know exactly what they are paying for, only to discover a growing list of hidden fees buried beneath promises of modernization and sustainability. Some tickets have nearly doubled in price since deregulation, yet most travelers cannot name a single surcharge. What are these charges really funding, and how did they become invisible? The hidden fee is already on your receipt, but almost nobody realizes what has changed until now. Airfare in the United States once told a simple story. Before 1978, ticket prices and routes were tightly regulated by the government. Travelers paid a single, all-inclusive fare. No surprises, no extra charges for a window seat or a checked bag. That changed with the Airline Deregulation Act of 1978. Suddenly, airlines could set their own prices, chase new routes, and compete for passengers in ways they never had before. The result was a golden age for budget flyers. Base fares dropped, new carriers flooded the market, and the number of people flying soared. But competition had a hidden cost. As airlines fought to undercut each other, they started searching for new ways to make up lost revenue. The answer was ancillary fees. By the late 1990s, checked baggage, meals, and even seat selection were quietly peeled away from the base fare and sold as add-ons. At first, these charges were small and optional. Over time, they became a normal part of booking a flight. By the middle of the 2000s, airlines like American and Delta rolled out baggage fees across their networks. Priority boarding, early seat selection, and change fees followed. For low-cost carriers, these extras made up a growing share of total revenue, sometimes outpacing the base fare itself. Then came September 11, 2001. New security rules swept across airports worldwide. Governments introduced security surcharges, often labeled as temporary, to cover the costs of enhanced screening and new equipment. In the United States, the September 11th security fee was added to every ticket. At first, $2.50 per segment, now $5.60. Similar charges appeared in Europe and Asia. These surcharges, initially justified as emergency measures, never disappeared. Instead, they set a precedent. If a fee could be introduced for security, why not for technology, sustainability, or modernization? During the 2000s and the 2010s, fragmented pricing became normalized. Airlines unbundled fares even further, and airports began to follow suit. A new trend took hold: privatization. Especially in Europe and Asia, governments handed over airport operations to private companies or public-private partnerships. These operators, tasked with turning a profit, looked for new ways to generate revenue. The answer was often a per-passenger concession fee quietly built into every ticket. Travelers rarely saw these charges itemized. They appeared as part of a generic taxes and fees line, or were simply folded into the total price. The COVID-19 pandemic brought air travel to a standstill. Airlines and airports scrambled to survive, relying on government bailouts and emergency loans. As traffic returned, so did the fees, this time with a new twist. Temporary recovery surcharges and pandemic-era levies meant to offset lost revenue became permanent fixtures. By 2022, the path was clear. New fees could be introduced in a crisis and kept long after the emergency had passed. Over 4 decades, the industry's playbook has barely changed. Deregulation opened the door to competition and lower base fares, but it also launched a relentless search for new revenue streams. Security surcharges, ancillary fees, privatization, and pandemic recovery charges have each added another layer to the price of a ticket. The incentives are clear: keep the base fare low to attract buyers and bury the rest in a maze of surcharges. That's how today's hidden airport fees became possible, by making every new charge look like just another part of the journey. A single airline ticket in 2026 tells a story with more twists than most travelers realize. 3 receipts, each from a different journey, reveal just how far the price can stray from the number you see in bold at booking. The first, a short-haul domestic flight within the United States. The base fare, what's advertised, sits at $39, but the final charge on the receipt is $71. The difference comes from a stack of line items, each with its own label: a $7 airport modernization fee, a $5 security surcharge, $5 for digital ID processing, $5 labeled as a sustainability contribution, and another $10 bundled under miscellaneous charges. The base fare covers less than 60% of the total. Every other dollar is claimed by a fee, a levy, or a charge that rarely gets explained. A transatlantic economy ticket from London to New York paints an even starker picture. The base fare, £189, is only the starting point. By the time the payment clears, the traveler owes £357. The receipt lists an IT levy of £22, an environmental charge of £31, a security surcharge at £17, a digital ID levy of £9, an exit fee of £40, and nearly £50 more in assorted service and facility charges. The advertised price covers just over half the journey. What remains is a dense forest of surcharges, each one with a name tested for minimal alarm. Some fees, like the IT levy, blend into the background, while others, such as the exit fee, are nearly impossible to avoid. Budget travelers in Europe face the same pattern. A ticket for a multi-leg trip, advertised at €119, balloons to €221 by checkout. The extra €102 comes from a mix of modernization surcharges, digital ID fees, sustainability contributions, and regional taxes. More than €80 of this is made up of new or renamed charges introduced in the last 2 years. The final receipt is a patchwork of small amounts, none of which seem significant on their own, but together they nearly double the cost of the trip. Across these examples, the base fare is just the tip of the iceberg. What lies beneath is a carefully layered system of surcharges, each one designed to blend into the background of modern travel. The receipts do not just show what you pay. They reveal how little of it goes to the flight itself, and how much is siphoned away by fees that are rarely questioned, almost never explained, and nearly impossible to escape. A new line item on the 2026 airline ticket quietly siphons away up to $7 per passenger, the digital ID contribution. Buried under names like IT levy or digital onboarding surcharge, this fee funds the biometric hardware and data platforms now standard at major airports. The amount varies, sometimes $4, sometimes as high as $7, depending on the airport, the airline, and the vendor behind the scenes. Travelers rarely see a breakdown, but contract disclosures and investor statements reveal where the money actually goes. Between 40 and 55% of each digital ID fee lands in the accounts of technology vendors. Companies like Sita, IDEMIA, and Amadeus supply the facial recognition cameras, cloud-based identity platforms, and integration services that power automated gates and document checks. Investor pitch decks from 2025 highlight these per-passenger charges as recurring revenue, scalable with airport traffic, and insulated from public scrutiny. The rest is divided. Airport authorities keep about a quarter, airlines claim a smaller share when they manage the platform, and the remainder covers government oversight and regulatory costs. The federal framework for these systems is massive. $5.5 billion allocated for modernization, with much of it routed through private contracts rather than direct public investment. Naming the fee is a science of its own. Internal memos from public relations consultants show that IT levy tested far better with focus groups than any mention of biometrics or surveillance. On tickets, the charge appears as a bland, technical-sounding line item, never as a biometric fee. This deliberate ambiguity is no accident. Airlines and airports have learned from past backlash over security surcharges and environmental taxes. If a fee sounds like a technical upgrade or a routine modernization, travelers are less likely to question it. In some cases, the digital ID contribution is bundled with other charges, making it nearly impossible to trace on the final receipt. Privacy advocates warn that the real cost is not just financial. The digital ID fee underwrites a permanent infrastructure for collecting and sharing biometric data across vendors, airports, and sometimes government agencies. Opting out is barely an option. Most airports require digital ID for expedited boarding, and security and data retention policies are rarely disclosed. In closed-door briefings, some lawmakers raised alarms about data sovereignty and the risk of vendor lock-in. But the contracts went forward, justified by the need for seamless travel and faster lines at the gate. For travelers, the digital ID fee is just one more charge folded into the price of flying. For vendors, it is a guaranteed payout, renewed every time a boarding pass is scanned. The digital infrastructure built on these fees is now as much a part of the airport as the runway or the baggage carousel. What began as a modernization project has become a permanent, passenger-funded system, one that is nearly invisible unless you know where to look. A new fee now appears on tickets across Europe and Asia, often labeled as a sustainability contribution or environmental surcharge. The amount varies wildly, sometimes just €1, sometimes more than €70. Lufthansa Group, for example, lists an environmental cost surcharge of €1 to €72 per ticket, citing the rising costs of sustainable aviation fuel and emissions compliance. Air France KLM adds its own levy, ranging from €2 to €24 for similar reasons. In Singapore, airlines are required to blend at least 1% sustainable fuel into every flight beginning in 2026, and the extra cost lands squarely on the passenger through new airport charges. Sustainability. On paper, these surcharges promise to fund a greener future for aviation. Airlines and airport authorities frame them as vital investments, necessary to meet net zero targets, comply with government mandates, and accelerate the shift to cleaner fuels. The receipts and press releases are filled with language about climate adaptation, green offsets, and sustainable transitions. The reality, however, is much harder to pin down. Investments, budget audits, and leaked spreadsheets tell a different story. In at least one EU country, whistleblowers found that less than half of the sustainability fee was spent on climate projects. A deep dive into Vienna Airport's 2025 to 2026 financials showed 44% of its so-called sustainability levy went to business lounge renovations, not carbon reduction. Independent reviews across multiple airports found similar patterns. Environmental surcharges routinely fund general operations, facility upgrades, or debt service, with only a minority of revenue directed to actual emissions abatement. Audits. The cost of making aviation truly sustainable is staggering. According to the International Civil Aviation Organization, buying enough sustainable aviation fuel to offset 1 ton of carbon dioxide runs between $600 and $800, far more than the price of carbon credits, which can be as low as $6 per ton. Even when a ticket carries the maximum €72 surcharge, that money covers just a fraction of the real cost to decarbonize a single flight. Airlines often use the funds to buy the cheapest available credits or to meet the bare minimum regulatory requirements, rather than investing in meaningful change. Cost environmental economists have been blunt in their assessments. One described the current system as greenwashing by design, pointing to the lack of strict ring fencing and the absence of third-party audits. Official government and airline statements continue to stress compliance and progress, but the public record is thin on verifiable outcomes. In most cases, travelers have no way to know whether their fee paid for cleaner fuel, a new solar panel, or simply a fresh coat of paint in the VIP lounge. Greenwashing. Consumer groups have called for real transparency, demanding that every euro, pound, or dollar collected in the name of sustainability be tracked to an actual climate project. But so far, oversight remains the exception, not the rule. The mismatch between the rhetoric of sustainability and the reality of spending is hard to ignore. As one environmental economist put it, we call it green. Passengers call it a surcharge. The question is, where does the money go? Transparency. For now, the sustainability fee is just another line on the ticket. Easy to justify, difficult to trace, and almost impossible for travelers to avoid. In 2024, a heated debate broke out in the halls of the European Parliament. Lawmakers questioned why passengers were being charged both a government-mandated security fee and a separate airport security modernization surcharge. Industry leaders, backed by airport operators, insisted the new fee was necessary to fund biometric scanners, AI-powered screening, and upgraded surveillance networks. Their public statements painted a picture of constant innovation, of airports racing to keep up with evolving threats. But critics pointed to the receipts. Travelers already paid for security through statutory charges, they argued. and these so-called modernization fees look suspiciously like double billing. Minutes from the parliamentary session captured the standoff. One committee member called the charges redundant by design, while industry representatives countered with references to technology upgrades and compliance costs. Airlines and airports claimed that without the extra fee, investment in security infrastructure would stall. Yet, behind closed doors, some regulators questioned whether the upgrades were truly new or simply a relabeling of existing expenses. The public record became a battleground of press releases, committee transcripts, and statements from consumer groups demanding an end to what they called fee stacking. The conflict set the stage for a deeper examination, one that would soon be fueled by a paper trail of internal documents, procurement memos, and investor briefings. A single procurement email from Paris-Orly Airport, dated June 2025, captures the strategy in stark terms. The original draft described a new fee as a biometric gate surcharge, but after a round of edits, circulated between the airport's CFO and the legal team, the final version replaced it with the phrase IT modernization levy. The change was not just cosmetic. Attached to that email was a slide from Amadeus, the airport's technology partner, describing the fee as a recurring revenue stream indexed to passenger volume. The pitch promised investors a predictable payout. Every traveler passing through a digital gate would trigger a small automatic charge, funneled directly to the vendor and the airport operator. The paper trail did not end there. A confidential investor deck circulated in the summer of 2025 framed the rollout as a cost-neutral transformation for airports. The true cost, according to the slides, would be carried by passengers, hidden in the fine print of their tickets. One map outlined the early adopters: Paris-Orly, Frankfurt, Changi, and major hubs in Japan and South Korea. The rollout was designed for speed and scale, with airports in North America and South America flagged as the next wave. These documents reveal intention, not accident. The language was chosen to avoid scrutiny. The model was built for steady profit, insulated from public debate. What looks like a technical upgrade on a receipt is, in reality, a carefully engineered system, one that turns every traveler into a source of recurring revenue, whether they realize it or not. In 2026, a single transatlantic ticket can show €72 in sustainability surcharges and $4 to $7 in digital ID fees, amounts that did not exist just a decade ago. As this documentary revealed, these charges are rarely explained at checkout, with internal memos describing them as IT levies or recurring revenue streams. Audits show less than half of green fees are verified as climate spending, and procurement emails confirm that fee labels are chosen for maximum acceptance rather than transparency. While parliamentary minutes from 2024 document political pushback, the exact breakdowns and long-term vendor contracts remain confidential. What is clear from ticket receipts, investor slides, and the evolution of airline pricing is this. For most travelers, the true cost of air travel is now shaped as much by hidden fees as by the base fare itself. As airports and airlines modernize, the line between necessary investment and profit-driven surcharges grows harder to trace. By design, the documents are public, but the full story of where your money goes is still being written.